This episode was funded by our Patreon backers. Without their generous support, this episode could not have been made. Please consider becoming one of our patrons today. There are few cities in America that bear as many scars as Chicago. Forged in violence, corruption, and catastrophe, the city is a portrait of steel and stone melancholy. A city of harsh winters, brutal summers, choking traffic, and an ever-present criminal element. On the face of it, Chicago should only be attractive to the brave or the foolish. But I have a confession. This is my favorite city in America, and I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
The state of the city is real good.
The essence of Chicago is found in movement. You'll find it racing through its subways, sliding by in the elevated rail lines, and with your eyes raised to the sky. This is not a city that likes to sit still. And while you're here, neither should you. Despite officially existing since 1833, almost everything you see in Chicago is no older than 120 years. Mrs. O'Leary's cow took care of that and is, as legend goes, responsible for one of the largest urban fires in history, leveling pretty much the entire city. But from those ashes rose an urban development project of unprecedented scale. Second City, one of Chicago's many nicknames, refers to this rebirth as the second iteration of this already internationally significant metropolis. And that opportunity for rebirth resulted in the city we know and love today.
Chicago is almost entirely based on a grid system, that urban development fetish that swept across America in the 19th century. But it does make getting around very, very easy because standard blocks are all 100 street addresses, an eighth of a mile long. So if there's an 800 address difference, you know you have exactly 1 mile to go between point A and point B.
While its layout might have remained static since its second coming, Chicago as an organism has never really stopped metamorphosing. And those changes are often twisting, writhing, agonizing rebirths born out of trauma. The Great Migration, racial revolution, violence, corruption, crime, political divide have all been the catalyst for pivotal moments in Chicago and America's history.
The state of the city is real good.
And each chapter brings its own set of challenges and opportunities.
Sweet home, Chicago.
The Great Migration was the catalyst for the significant Southern influence of the Chicago Renaissance in the 1930s and 40s. 6 million African Americans, fleeing barbaric Jim Crow laws, crushing poverty, and agricultural depression, abandoned the Deep South for the tenuous opportunity found in cities like LA, New York, Detroit, and Chicago. And while many left their homes with just the clothes on their backs, they also brought with them their religion, their architecture, and their ideology. They also brought their music and their food.
If that fried chicken, you've never had anything like this. An institution. The legend goes that it was born because a preacher took the last piece of fried chicken out of a little chap's hand, and from then on, the chap being Harold, was on a mission to create and distribute the best Southern-style fried chicken in Chicago. A legacy of the Great Migration, one of the things that didn't come with it was this, and goddamn am I glad it did. So it's way different than most fried chicken you would have had because it's cooked much hotter in a very different type of oil. So it's not greasy at all. It's very, 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 very crunchy, which is kind of how I prefer it. And then you get, I like the hot sauce. You can get mild sauce. Catfish, hush puppies, okra, all good southern fried food classics served through a bulletproof window. Yeah, it really is. There's no dignified way to eat fried chicken.
Meet me in Chicago. Get yourself something to eat.
Italian food and Chicago are synonymous. With the city being home to Italian Americans for generations, there is no shortage of phenomenal Italian and Italian American food in the city. From the comfort foods found at the legendary Club Lucky to the quintessential Italian beef sandwich at Capone's old haunt, Italian Village, this is a city that has an undeniable and enduring appetite for the cuisine of Mother Italy. And with the variety of libation available at the city's speakeasies and restaurant, it is very clear that Prohibition is most assuredly over in Chicago. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard, but they're kind of big on pizza here. With institutions like Gino's, deep dish pizza is a Chicago birthright that truly puts the pie in pizza pie. And whenever I'm in the city, there's one spot I have to visit.
I know a place.
Pequod's.
I'm a Pequod's boy myself, always have been, but I don't think there's a wrong choice. There are people that may fight you in the street for that, but the composition is generally the same no matter where you go in terms of how it's layered and its sizes and all that. The differences will be in the crust. So Pequod's is a caramelized crust, so it's much darker, much crispier. As you move around the city, you'll find cornmeal-based crust, which are delicious in and of themselves. Some are yeastier, some are doughier. They do take 45 to 60 minutes to cook because just, this is something where light will not escape its surface. So you need to be a little bit patient, but they are absolutely wonderful. You can't come to Chicago and not at least try and do what I'm about to do.
Chicago certainly has a talent for undignified bites. I don't think I've experienced a city anywhere with such a proclivity for meat in all its wonderful varieties, sizes, and shapes. Like this wonderful, hallowed, delicious, and tubular example.
There's a litany of meat-based foods that Chicago is famous for, and there's a reason for that. The city was built on its meatpacking district, so the quality of meat in general, but particularly in sausage, which is what the whole of this region is famous for, is exemplified in street food like this. Polish dogs, Maxwell Street style dogs, they're all absolutely delicious. There is, however, one golden rule. Under no circumstances should you ever put ketchup on one of these things. People will actually scream at you in the street, and quite rightly so. It's heresy to put ketchup on a hot dog. Cue the comments.
Just steps away from Jim's glorious sausage stand is Manny's. A Chicago mainstay since 1942, this cafeteria par excellence does so many things right. From its famous pastrami on rye to a particular treat that I and a lot of other Chicagoans cannot resist.
Mercy, mercy.
Pie.
I have a little bit of a confession. A lot of the cities that we go to, they always wax lyrical about how amazing their food is or their signature dish, and often they're great, but there's a lot of nostalgic bias in there as well, so some of the times you're like, but Chicago is one of those rare cities where it actually lives up to the hype, and places like this, Manny's, cafeteria style places, are where you can experience all of that amazing Chicago flavor. Like this, the cherry pie that I gather is President Obama's favorite, which, what more of an endorsement do you need?
Okay, please indulge me one last endorsement. This one is kind of important to me.
I'm not sure at what point on this particularly shitty timeline you're going to be watching this, whether we'll still be elbow deep in COVID, or it will be a wonderful and distant memory. But one thing has become abundantly clear, not just in researching this episode, but being on the ground, is that the pandemic has decimated Chicago's little restaurants, cafes, bars, to the point where the universal and unanimous recommendations for best diner, best blues bar, best chicken joint are all closed. And finding those places is almost impossible now. So I'm begging you that when you go to Chicago, or frankly any city in the world, town, village, wherever you find yourself, go to places like this. The mom and pop places that have been open for 100 years, because if you don't, they will disappear forever.
And because you told me you just couldn't live without it, I am delighted to tell you that a glorious Big Mac sandwich in Chicago will cost you $6 American and 23 American cents. We'll bring it back, people. We'll bring it back.
2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun.
We have a proud tradition in Chicago of believing that no matter how long it takes, how much we have to endure, it's only a matter of time before our team finally wins it all. The waiting builds character. We have a lot of character.
Talk to Chicago natives about their city, and a word that comes up time and time again is character. My friend Jimmy is a Chicagoan born and bred, a fierce proponent of the city's role as an incubator for creativity and culture. He too is a staunch defender of this city's character, even in its darkest hours. It's probably also worth mentioning at this point that Jimmy is also the drummer for the Smashing Pumpkins.
There's very few places that have a vibe like Chicago. There's a nurturing that happens when you're in a city that's as confident as Chicago, right? You've got to stand up for yourself. You've got to walk tall. You've got to walk straight. You've got to figure stuff out. So much of my identity as an artist is rooted in the bones of this city. I mean, we purposely kept the band in Chicago because we wanted a Chicago influence. We knew that there was a power in the Midwest that we couldn't tap into in LA and New York. I mean, the Art Institute, the architecture, the geography of the city, the transfer of the Delta blues to Chicago. And for all of those reasons, there's a resonant harmonic, whether you're cognizant of it or not, that becomes part of you. And maybe sometimes you only know that you had it when you don't have it anymore, right? When you're standing somewhere and you're like, something's not here. There's a component missing, right? And you come back to Chicago and you feel like, this is complete. No matter what you do in Chicago, you always felt like you were part of the story of Chicago.
We're the world capital of the blues, so really, when you get right down to it, this is where everybody came to bring their blues. People came up here, the great industrial migration to the northern cities to find work, and the people who played the music for them, they followed suit. They came up here because they wanted their home music, made them feel more at home here.
This is a blues bar on a Saturday night in Chicago, and that's as much noise as you can make, really. Rico McFarlane!
Say you wanna snuggle up real tight, then you want a fun fight. Say you wanna drink that juice, and all hell's on the way to lose. Just then you wanna play, with the chips falling our way.
Chicago is a complicated city. It always has been. In fact, it feels like a city constantly on the brink of pulling itself apart. Divided, partisan, a city of joy, rage, hubris, and hope. Yet, paradoxically, there is a sense of unity among all its factions and tribes. Between the cracks, there is an unrestrained, unapologetic sense of pride and belonging etched indelibly in the granite and glass of Chicago. Music, food, art, architecture, sport, comedy, heritage, that grand confluence of otherwise turbulent waters is what makes Chicago feel alive. And that, my friends, is why this is my favorite city in America.
To my sweet home.